Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Amber and this is Fundy Freed.
Hey everybody, it's Editing Amber, and I just wanted to pop on here really quick before the video gets started to let you know that I am a huge respecter of people who want to be anonymous in telling their story. And so today you will see a emoji or a happy face or something in place of the person who is on the other side of the survivor story, just out of respect for her wanting to be anonymous. And but this does not take away from the importance of her story. Her story is very good. So I just wanted to let you guys know. And back to the original programming.
Today we have a very special guest. This is Sarah and has come out of the IFB fundamental movement and she's here to share her story today. Thank you so much for coming on, Sarah.
Of course.
And so to get it kicked off, just kind of tell us how you got into the IFB, or were you raised in it? How did it all start for you?
Sometimes people ask, like, where were you born and what hospital or what town or what? And I'm like, I was born in the church. I really honestly felt like my parents could have had me in the church and that would have been like norm. Uh, so
I
I was
understand.
definitely born in the church, and I'll get to this in a second, but at some point when I was like 8 to 10 years old, I realized that I had like three personalities. I had home, church, and school. And at home, it didn't really exist. I was an only child. My parents were um, actually rather abusive. And then at school, I could exist like in my own sort of weird way. I didn't have very many friends. I think I was kind of an annoying, awkward child. Um, and then at church, I had to like be somebody else, or I had to, conform to like be who the people there said I needed to be and do these
Right,
things to get this thing and get this I don't even remember the words, but like achieve whatever level of whatever I needed. Like I was always reaching for something that was never really there. But
right.
so we went to church Sunday school, Sunday morning. I had junior church while grown-ups were downstairs, and then we had Sunday afternoon nap time. And then Sunday night was the like, you know, adult church. There was no junior church, and that was torture for me as a kid, but whatever. And then there was Wednesday night, was it prayer, and sometimes other days in the week. But so I was at the church a lot.
hmm
Um, oh, what did
Did
I say? Oh,
your family, or were they completely immersed in the independent fundamental Baptist movement? Did they like follow like certain preachers or certain camps? Like I know some, like I grew up in like the Phil Kidd, Sammy Allen type camp. I know some people do Ruckman from Pensacola or Bob Jones. Were you guys kind of affiliated with something like that?
so I left that particular church that I grew up in at 14, so I was
Hmm.
still, kind of young. Um, I know there was some sect of group that we kind of followed because there was um a Bible. I don't know if it was Baptist, but an independent of some sort, camp that we were affiliated with, and like all our kids went to this camp, and I know at the camp when I went there, there was certain preachers that had like cabins named after them, and certain colleges that came and like were the counselors. So I know there was a connection to
Yeah.
some. I don't really know who, except the name Moody is in my brain, but maybe he was just a popular guy anyway.
Yeah, D.L. Moody was a really big Baptist preacher back in, like, I think in the 30s that a lot
Yeah,
of IFB is subscribed to. Hmm.
yeah, I think that was like the guru of my my crew. And we're in Connecticut, and so the camp was in Massachusetts, so like the Connecticut Mass, whoever was there, we were there. Um,
Hmm.
Yeah, I was gonna say about the camp too. Uh, those counselors and they sort of had their own evangelical way of going to churches and like advertising. And I remember as a really young person, 7, 8, those counselors were coming to my churches, to my church and advertising, and I just knew like I had to go to that camp when I got to the right age. It was an overnight camp. I forget what age, maybe 10 it started or something. And so I
Yeah.
went every summer, just like everybody else in my church and all the other kids in that Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont. Um, and then once, as a part of the camp culture, once I got to high school, there was people from colleges coming and advertising sort of and saying, you got to come to our Christian school and this is where you will find your life's purpose and God is here and all these things. So then I sort of subscribed to a Bible college that was in Pennsylvania
Hmm.
that I just like had to go to because that's where people were telling me to go. And I don't regret it, but I do wish I had some other influence happening such that
Right.
like going to this Bible college was not the place for me. I was coming out as a lesbian and was like shaving my hair and hurting myself and doing all the things like to rebel against all this stuff that was on me. And
Right.
yet I still went to the school because it was just where I was told I was gonna go and I should go. And like so it was a waste of a year because I was really like pushing all their boundaries and
Right.
um but I guess my point is like I just was somebody else's project or like you had to be all the things that I wasn't and I never fit
Yes.
into the
Into
box,
the mold. Yeah.
into the mold. I was I came out wrong or something. But
No, you didn't come out wrong. They just have the wrong kind of box, I think. There should be no box.
actually
You
something
know,
I was just looking up the other day because I read a book about some my being age 13 to 16. It was sort of like this time period that I wrote about and somewhere in there I just was looking it up recently. I remembered that my pastor from the church I grew up in came to visit me. I was in a foster home, and I just was rereading some of the things that he was saying to me, and I just thought it was kind of odd how I wrote. He told me the truth. He said blah blah blah, all the things that like weren't the truth, all the things of like I should have forgiven my parents, and I should come back home, and I shouldn't listen to all these other adults and I should think about what God and all these things. But I guess what strikes me is that I was so backwards still and so like convinced that because he was my pastor, he was telling the truth. And I wrote it all down. I was like, he's telling me the truth that I need to like love my parents even though they were abusing me and
right.
all these things. And I put it in my book and I published it and I didn't even think of it when I did that. But like I was backwards. My brain was so brainwashed. I was so taught that there's this one way.
Hmm.
Anyway, as a full grown adult
Yeah.
now, and I've gone through the process, I am definitely recognize how
Yeah,
backwards.
I find that I mean, because I grew up my dad was extremely abusive as well, like very abusive. And he is also a pastor in the church
Mm,
and in many churches. And so it's funny to me how they would almost like the abusers use this ideology of total forgiveness because we can be forgiven by God of all of our
mhm,
sins.
mhm.
That then they put it on the victims to then you have to forgive your abuser
Yeah,
because they've repented. Even if they commit that sin over and over again, as long as they ask forgiveness, we're in the wrong if we don't
mhm,
actually actively forgive them.
yep. That
And
took years
I
to come through.
Yes. Yes. Because I just in the last 2 years finally cut my dad out of my life
Mm.
and completely cut him out
Well, good for
because
you.
I felt so guilty because I didn't.
Mm,
I did not forgive him. I couldn't let things go, but I still wanted I felt like I had to keep that relationship going because I was
mhm,
told to.
right.
And it was probably one of the biggest steps in my healing process was learning to be okay with not having that relationship.
Yeah. Well, good for you then, right?
Oh, thank you.
If that's where you're headed and that's what you want, like go for it. And I
Right.
felt like at some point I went through this angry phase of it's actually like I'm not the one that's supposed to do the forgiving, that it's like God who forgives or whatever. And I know there's different theories on that. And like, yes, you can forgive someone who's hurt you or whatever, but like I feel like the model would have been um repent and then you get forgiveness or something. I don't know.
Right.
It's a lot easier just to not go there, but I did not feel like I had to forgive my parents for what they did to me. And I was pretty firm on that. Like I
Yeah.
said, I was
It,
kind of a rebel.
I was a secret rebel. Like I questioned so many things like growing up. And then I moved out from my parents' house whenever I was 21, which was totally abnormal because I was supposed to stay under the headship of my dad
Of
until
course.
I married. And
Well, I left at 14. Yeah.
so that was like even more like explosive, I'm sure, to be like, "Oh my gosh, she's gone." You made that
Mhm.
decision for yourself, and that's really brave to do that, especially at the age of 14.
Agreed.
So, yeah. I mean, I can't I can like I have dissociative amnesia, so there's a lot of things that I've blocked out in my head. But I remember at 14, like I don't know if I don't know that I would have been brave enough to do that. So I really commend you for that because I think my life would have gone to a different trajectory if I had made those steps.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. Well, when I left my family, I moved in with like a foster family, but it was one of my friends.
mhm,
And they're a Christian family, and I think so. I mean, there's a whole world of like what it's like to just move into a family that is loving and kind when you weren't in that. So I really struggled a lot just to sort of live in the real world and have
mhm,
kindness and whatever. But addition to that, I mean, they're a Christian family and they went to a congregational church, just like the local one in town, and they did not have the very narrow-minded and like put you in a box rules. They were like,
mhm.
God is love, like be
Yeah,
free in that kind of thing, which was so hard for me also. Not just the like, okay, you're now in a safe environment and people are caring, but like now you have this freedom to love a God that I didn't know. I think I learned in that year with them that um, believing in God and having a relationship is a relationship, not just a higher thing that you like go running to and cry to and ask for forgiveness when you've done wrong things or whatever. Like
mhm,
so that was really eye-opening. And I guess to cut change subject a little bit, but so I lived with them only for a year, and then I kind of went into a bunch of other foster homes for a while throughout the middle years of high school and the end of high school. But then I went back to the church that I'd grown up in because by that point my parents had left or had been asked to leave. I'm not sure. But so I kind of I still had that draw to like be with the people I knew.
mhm.
Um, and then I guess because my parents weren't there, it was more about like they could build the relationship with me. Um,
Right.
but then that's wherein I got sort of stuck on the track of I had to go to this camp and I had to go to this college and be this person that I wasn't. So
Yeah.
again, I don't regret it, but it was wasted years. It was a bad decision.
Yeah, it's really easy to almost mask and hide your true self whenever it comes to that world. And because I have quite a few friends who came out over the years after kind of deconstructing, and came into their sexuality as they started deconstructing and became more comfortable with it. But they felt like having to hide that for so long was really part of why they struggle with mental health so much as they were in the church. I mean, do you feel like you can kind of relate to that?
Well, yes, and so a part that I haven't even mentioned yet, but I went to that college, the Bible college for the year, bad decision, and then I moved back to Connecticut
Hmm.
I'm sorry, my cats are making an awful racket over
No,
there, playing with
no,
my
you're
sticks
good.
and dumping them into the metal trash can. So a little
You're totally fine.
distracting.
My guinea pigs are over here squeaking half to death. I don't know if you can hear
Okay,
them,
I
but
cannot hear
but
them. No.
okay, I can't hear your cats either, so you're fine.
Great. Okay, so anyway, so after college and I came back to Connecticut and I was now like, okay, I can be me and I can do the things I want and have all the fun or whatever.
Hmm.
I joined up with a church group that I thought was like, yay, God is love. We can raise our hands and we can sing and jam and like a non-denominational church, I guess is what they were.
Yeah,
And in that family, I got really like, oh, I like these people. These are my friends. But if I tell them I like girls, I'm out or whatever. And so I really hid that just because I was like, I'm okay living two lives. I've done it my whole life and I don't have to talk about anything about myself. I can hide as much as I want. And I did that so that I could have family and friends, I think. Um,
hmm,
until I really did begin a relationship with a woman and I felt, okay, these people love me enough, been with them for like 7 years. I can tell them this is who I am, this is who I've always been. Like hope like I don't know, cross my fingers. And they
right.
literally said, I love you, but like I can't be your friend if or that hole that you think you're filling is really the hole you need to fill with Jesus and all the I almost got an anti or not a like gay conversion CD from one of them.
Yes.
And I was just
Yeah.
thrown that like I thought I had gotten away from that cookie cutter Christian, you have to be a certain person thing.
Yeah.
And I
That's
hadn't.
so
I was just
heartbreaking.
still I was still in the trap. I know. I lost almost everybody I knew, um, so that I could start a family. And
Yeah.
so I guess
And
and then
it's
that was the end point for me is where I was like, I can't be with people who can't be with me.
no. And it's so sad that we like that Christians make it to where you have to be, because I mean I'm still a person of faith. I still have my Christianity. I mean I've deconstructed a lot, but I still believe in God. I still believe in Jesus.
Yes.
And I don't understand why we had to have this great divide if you have to be cis, straight, this particular way, marry someone with opposite genitals to be able
Hmm.
to love God. That
Yeah.
makes no sense to me because God made us. God created us if we ascribe to that belief. So
Fearfully and
then
wonderfully made, right?
we are fearfully wonderfully made and he knew us before we were born if we could look into
Yeah.
Jeremiah, right?
Hmm.
And so he knows exactly who we're going to be when we're a grown up and this is not a choice that we make. This is who we are.
Hmm.
And I don't think that God loves us any less or loves people any less
Absolutely.
because of their sexual preference. Because
Yeah.
I don't think God really cares, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, and that's a whole blog, a
That's
whole
a
show, a
whole
whole whatever.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I
that's
guess
a
the
whole nother
big
thing. Yeah.
picture, right? The big picture is that if you're only subscribing to one version of a Bible or one pastor or one, I guess with the independent fundamental Baptist churches, they're not of the larger Baptist clan, they're independent. So they're like the one person in charge is the one person who has a say, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're subscribing to the person that came before them, who also was the
Yes.
only person who meant anything. So you really can get down this little narrow road of like, you have to wear the shorts past your knees and cut your hair a certain length and wear only
Yes.
one color. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's how it
It's
happens.
crazy. It's crazy because I've been in churches where you can't wear wire rim glasses because wire rim glasses are considered vain. I'm
Right.
like, who came up with that?
Yeah,
I don't remember reading that even in if you want to look at the Levitical law, I don't think it says anything about wire rim glasses.
for real. I do
So
remember
someone came along. Go ahead.
yeah, well, and I was gonna say the Bible college I went to, um, I I wore purple knee-high soccer socks that were like warm so that when I wore a skirt, I could have like because they made us wear skirts, I could have
Hmm.
my warmer legs and whatever. And I wasn't allowed to wear those. Or like at some point, somebody said, that's not really. with the code of like dress, skirt, whatever. I'm like, my legs are cold. You won't let me wear pants. Like, but so just wanting to wear purple socks is
Right.
against the like womanly whatever thing. It was beyond bizarre. And I shaved my
Yeah.
hair one day, and they said I was
Mm-hmm.
influencing other girls to not be womanly
Shave
and
their
all these
hair.
things. Yeah.
I mean,
So
that's
that's I hate.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely learned a thing or two.
Yeah, I went to a Bible college for, I'd say it was about a year. And like you, it was kind of like a wasted year, but it was very dictated where the girls had like we could wear casual skirts, but casual skirts were khaki skirts with the zippers in the front, no denim skirts. And if you went to
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to
chapel,
wear denim.
you had to wear zippers on the side or the back of your skirt,
Why?
or it was not considered dressy.
Oh, Jesse.
Yeah, like you had to wear a particular, like it was like the craziest thing. You had to wear pantyhose or nylons, however you want to call them.
Yeah, that's what they were
So,
telling me. That's why I couldn't wear the socks
yes.
because they
So
weren't pantyhose or nylons.
I did the same thing. I would wear knee-high socks and they'd be like, "You're out." I would get demerits. I'm like, "I'm a freaking adult. Why are you giving me demerits
Mm.
for wearing knee-high socks? That makes no sense."
Right, and then this is all under the I don't know umbrella of like this is God's word kind of thing. It's like no, yeah, a little frustrated there with that.
Yes, yeah. That's a whole different tangent because I can get on my
Hmm.
soapbox with whenever it
Hmm.
comes to dress code. It's some crazy stuff.
At some point, and probably after that year of college, I realized that I didn't need the box and the rules and the regulations and all the singing the old hymns of the faith, which I hated. But like I didn't need all that to have a relationship. I decided I can have faith without needing uh, all that prescribed stuff. So I think that's when I kind of learned after that year, not during that college year, but at some point I learned like what faith is or was and the difference between like being religious. Because people would hear I went to a Bible college or that I was raised in the church and they would say, "Oh, you're religious." And I was like, "No, because that's subscribing to the whole thing, the whole box."
Right,
Um,
right.
and but you can have faith and be spiritual and have a belief system. So I still have
Hmm.
that, and I'm very clear to tell people I might have been raised in that, but it taught me what not to do, kind of.
Yes. It taught me how I did not want to treat people. Like, I
Right.
don't want to treat people the way that I was treated in this belief system and how I've seen them treat other people that are different than them.
Mhm.
And because that's to me, that's not who Jesus is. That's not what Jesus represented whenever he was here on earth. And it literally does. It just confines God to this small little box that's man-made. And whenever God is really this infinite, large being that loves us. I mean, that's just kind of like the conclusions I've come to. And it's really sad to be I'm sad for being caught up in it for so long, but at the same time, I did learn a lot from it. Took away a lot of things that I didn't want to do, I didn't want to be, and how I really wanted to be, and how I wanted to raise my family, kind of thing.
Mhm. Right. So I guess it wasn't
Yeah,
all a waste.
all a waste, right? That would be just so sad if it was all a waste. I mean, but it wasn't
Yeah.
the best years of my life, right?
Right.
But you know, so Um, after you got out of college, did you have you continued going to church, or are you still like in like a community like or like a more of a Unitarian type of church or structure or
So not currently, but like I said, when I left college and I moved back to Connecticut, and I sort of found that non-denominational church, and I was with them for 7 or 8 years.
right.
Um, and that's when I was like, oh, I'm gonna get married, and like, they were like, okay, bye. So
Right.
so I went 2008 to 2000 till now, I guess. I'm not a part of that family anymore. I've since divorced, but
Hmm.
haven't returned to a church community. Sometimes I think I miss the community. I miss praising together and singing and like just worship components um and doing that in community. I feel like I missed that.
Yeah.
And I had gained that from that non-denominational church and a group of friends, and I was part of the worship band, and I think worship is really like in singing and just from like my heart, I feel like is a really important thing to
Yeah.
me. So I do miss that. But I guess the other part of me that doesn't want to jump into something that I feel like is gonna hurt me again, maybe, I think that must be stronger. And
Yeah.
I don't even hold on to that cliche phrase of like the church hurt me or something. I don't feel that way. I feel like church has a problem, and the churches that I went to were not good, and I just sort of got stuck in them, and there's no fault necessarily. Um,
Right.
and I'm also not like giving them a pass and saying, oh, well, they don't know. Although I sometimes think they don't know because they're just blind to the things that I feel like I've seen or traveled the world, gone around and back. Like I feel like I see different things. So I'm
Yes.
not trying to lay blame, but I'm also not, I guess, not ready to feel like I can have that again.
Right. Well, I mean, it's kind of hard. I have a friend who has been out of the church for a little bit, and she says that it's hard to think about going back and not being able to be my authentic self going back into this environment because I've been myself and out with my sexuality for this long, or even with just different things that I believe that differs from what I used to. But and then going back and now presenting my true self to these people, I don't know if I'll be accepted. And I don't know if I want to go back into hiding.
Of course. Yeah,
You know, I don't want
I would never want to go to a place where I felt like I had to hide or be somebody different. And I know there are churches that are like open and affirming and
mhm.
um but they still have such like traditional things that just don't vibe with me. And
Yeah.
so I don't know. It's hard when you hold such a like feeling of so many things. Like you don't want to break
Yes.
through it and try to have a little bit of the joy if it if it comes with a little bit of bad. Like I know you can't always get everything, but
Right.
I'm okay with nothing instead of having piecemeal, I guess.
Yeah. And I understand the community, I think, is what keeps a lot of people in. Even if they want to leave, I think the loss of that large community is extremely painful because I know that I've left churches, and by the time this airs, will have been gone out of the current church I'm in because we're leaving our church. Um, once we leave, that those relationships that we've built for the last 4 or 5 years are going to be gone
Mhm.
because the reason we're leaving is because there's things going on that we just don't agree with and we don't want our kids to be raised in it. And because we're stepping away, we're losing that large part of our community. And this has happened over and over and over again. And it's not just, I think it's all of us that have gone through this and have left that type of world. We lost that community. And so now we're kind of like these floating enigmas,
Mhm.
just kind of out here trying to find our place. And it can get lonely out in the real world, as I call it.
Abs- Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So have you found anything that has kind of become like your community now, or like have you um, kind of discovered new things that you've enjoyed that's kind of away from that since you've
Yeah,
been out
I
for
have
a little bit?
actually. Um, so I feel like my people are the sort of I work with a lot of my people, which I think is really great. Like I love my job and I love my coworkers and um we're sort of like people who can't stand being behind a desk or inside or we hate overhead lights and we're outdoor educators and so I have the woods
Nice.
and the animals and wildlife, the trees, and I'm not trying to sound all like earth spiritual or whatever, but like there is a real connectability and you can find God in the forest and in the quiet and in the
100%.
beauty and awe. So
Yes.
I'm with my people when I'm like by myself in the forest because I feel like the trees and
Yeah.
the leaves and everything is like
Yes.
something I really enjoy. And I had I had an appreciation for nature when I was a kid, but like I didn't know it was a thing to explore or enjoy. Like
Hmm.
I knew I had the interest, and I could look back sort of in hindsight and be like, totally makes sense why I was digging up the rocks and playing in the mud and wanting to go where I wasn't supposed to and whatever. Um, so I feel like it's just an innate part of me to be outside, and I love children, I love teaching, and I love being with people who like to inspire and create and whatever. So
Yes.
all that said, once I realized that like I didn't need people to love me for a thing or not a thing, or and when I didn't need to sort of prove myself to anybody, and I didn't need yeah like approval or acceptance or whatever, which I think I was trying to get from my church community because it was all this like hierarchy and just like how
Very
good are we or not
performance
good are we,
based. Yeah.
performance based. Well, once
Yes.
all that was kind of out of my life and all that mattered was like, am I um am I healthy? Am I safe? Am I happy? Yeah, healthy, safe, happy, doing good, like still have my faith, and I
Hmm.
can help make the world a better place. Like once that all kind of clicked and settled into place, yeah, I definitely have a community and I know where I can go. So for example, a year ago or whatever it was when I think I saw it was I think it was the 2020 interview episodes that were about the cults and
Hmm.
various cults, and I watched it, and then there was something about, I don't even remember if that's what triggered me, if I looked up something, if there was something about the IFB in it. I can't remember specifically. But once I watched that, I was like, oh, so like all my years have been a part of some brainwashy thing. Like it wasn't real or whatever. And I did a little soul searching and realized that I absolutely did leave a traumatic thing. And it makes sense why I'm so confused about all the things that I didn't really believe, but thought I did and didn't know and was told to
Hmm.
believe, whatever. So once I could kind of put all that aside and realize that that wasn't, not that it wasn't real, but it wasn't the truth, I guess,
Right.
I could then open up and be like, hey, these trees are beautiful and God made them and I love God for that or whatever. I can have my own way of
Yeah.
relating,
Absolutely.
much more
Yeah.
authentic.
I actually love hiking. I love getting out into the outdoors. And I have found that I feel closer to God in nature than I have ever actually in the four walls of a church. Like it's just there's something about it that is just so, I don't know, almost euphoric and just so everything's just connected and everything is just, I don't know, fluid and I don't know, you just feel like you're part of something so much bigger than yourselves. And I don't know, I just always feel a lot more connected in the
Mhm.
woods. And I hike up a few miles, I throw up my hammock and I just kind of hide out for like a few
Mm,
hours and
yeah.
make my way back down. And it's like the most peaceful, I mean, I'm dying by the time I get up the mountain because I can't breathe. but
Yeah.
but but it is so it's been I took up hiking around 2020. I never was really an outdoorsy person until 2020 hit and like we had to all like quarantine and be away from
Everybody
people.
had to, yeah.
Yeah. We had to be away from people. So, and I'm an introvert by nature, and so I actually kind of like to be by myself. I need that time to myself to recharge, but getting out into the woods just or into nature just really just kind of changed even my outlook on faith. And so I
Hmm.
can really kind of relate to what you're telling me. That's really fast. I love talking to people who really enjoy doing stuff like that too because you get it. You
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes I feel like, because I know that there's a lot of a variety of people sort of who I work with or who are in my community of like similar like-minded educators or whatever. I feel like a lot of them are either atheist or pagan or some are into witchery, I don't even know what it's called, stuff
Yeah,
and the
Wiccan
tarot
or and
cards
stuff
and
like that.
Wiccan.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they value like earth and the forest and nature and stuff as a part of their worship and lack of worship or whatever it is. And so I feel like I'm ascribing to that when I talk about the forest or nature or something, and I'm really not. Like I have
Right.
my own separate way of
Yeah.
relating to it, and so I'm just
Yeah.
wanting to make that clear. Like, or even I know there's like I know like Buddhist sayings and phrases that I've heard or whatever that are like, just be a good person. And I feel like if I say that like just be good, something that people might think I'm not of Christian faith and I just believe in like everybody just needs to be good, which isn't true. And the side note is we should be good people. That's like, universal
Yeah.
thing. So sometimes I get scared that, and actually it's probably from the way I was raised, that like there is only
I
one
was
way and
about to
only
say,
only
yes.
Baptists go to heaven or whatever,
Yes.
which I
Yes.
swear I was taught once because I was going to go to some youth group thing of one of my friends, and it wasn't a Baptist church. My parents wouldn't let me go because they were afraid I was going to get taught some other thing.
Yes.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so that's just so deep in my brain,
It is. I
which is
mean, and I was actually going to
crazy.
actually say that. I was like, because we were taught that doing anything with nature or even caring about like the climate change or anything like that, that's all like earth worship
Mhm.
and it's pagan and we shouldn't ascribe to that. And so I felt a lot of the same emotions whenever I started realizing how close I felt to God and nature. And I'm like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh, am I being Wiccan right now? And I'm like, wait, no, I'm not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, I still believe Jesus. And so it was like a process to like get kind of move that out of my way because it was so ingrained
Sure.
that it was wrong to
Yeah.
do that.
I even feel sometimes have this weird sense of feeling guilty that I don't tell people that I'm spiritual or have much faith or believe in Jesus or whatever. But then I think I'm not out here to tell them all. That's I can't do that. That's what people did to me. Tell the
Mhm.
world about Jesus. Like I can't. So,
Yes.
and I feel
Yes.
okay with it.
Yeah, and like so the Baptists are very big on like proselyting and to you have to witness to so many people. You have to go door knocking and you have to
Yeah.
do visitations and you have to win so many souls because that's a crown and a jewel in your crown to give to Jesus kind of thing.
Oh, that's what it
And
was at that other friend's church thing. They had a little pin, and you got was it Awana? Was maybe that's Baptist. I don't remember, but it was
oh,
you
Awana's
got like a
Baptist, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it was something else then. But you got a pin if you like brought a friend, and that was what my friend was gonna get, and my that's why my
Yes.
parents were like, no, they're doing some other like reward system that isn't what we're trying to teach you.
Right?
I don't know. I
I was like,
remember the
I don't want
pin,
that.
and she was
Yes.
gonna get a
Yes.
dot on it if she brought a friend to church. And I couldn't go because that wasn't how the Baptists did it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My
how backwards.
my best friend that I've had since like right out of high school, she's actually Seventh-day Adventist or formerly Seventh-day Adventist, which is a totally different opposite spectrum of Baptist. And I was taught they were a cult. So, which is funny because I was in a cult,
Yeah, everybody
calling,
who wasn't Baptist was wrong
a
and
cult.
cult and
Yeah.
bad and
And
evil.
so the fact that we even became friends was shocking. It was like my last 2 years in high school, and my mom ended up sending us to a Christian school, which was supposed to be non-denominational, but was actually ran by an apostolic church because they speak in tongues and would actually bring all of that into their chapel services, and the parents had no idea. It was a crazy time. But um what my friend and I did is we based our friendship on not trying to convert each other. We were like, okay, we both believe very differently. So we're going to agree to disagree and we're just going to develop this friendship. And from that is where I learned that I can actually have friendships with people who don't believe like me
Sure.
and have healthy relationships with people who don't believe like me. And I don't have to try to convert them because if they ask me questions, I'll answer them, but I have no expectation that they're going to
Mm-hmm.
change or convert because that's not up to me. That's between them and God kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Which makes me feel guilty because, as I'm deconstructing and trying to get away from it, I'm like, oh my gosh, how many people am I going to lead to hell because I'm not telling them about Jesus?
But
It's
that's
like
not
in
on
your
us.
head.
Yeah.
But
I
it's
know.
not, but it's not, exactly. It's like, but that's
Mhm,
in your head. That like rolls through my mind sometimes, and I'm like, no, no, no,
mhm,
no. That's
mhm.
not right. That's just the stuff that we were fed,
Right.
basically.
Well, when I found that Facebook group that was, cult survivors, so A, I had to recognize, okay, it is kind of cult-like, whether we're calling it a cult or cult-like, whatever. But
Mhm.
so I had to come through an understanding of what that definition is. But then there was I think it was like in their intro or the pinned like note at the top, and it was just like, have you recognize any of these things? And there's just a big long list of all the things that like people's churches did and didn't do that you're just supposed to jog your mind of like, oh yeah, we did that, whatever. But when I had read through
Mhm.
that, and it really did make me think of things that I had experienced as a kid and didn't know were anything odd or whatever until looking back to recognize how strict and narrow everything was. But I guess what I was just thinking of now is that um, I remember a visitor had come to our church, and while we were singing the old hymns of the faith, and I can't imagine how he got to this, but he was like praise. He was kind of like had his hands up, where are my hands there? Hands up,
Mhm.
just singing, praising,
Mhm.
whatever. And I know that everybody in my church thought that was weird or wrong or whatever, but they weren't going to say anything because he was just a visitor. And no lie, I remember this. The next week, my pastor in his sermon was talking about tongues and hand raising and praise and like worshiping idols and everything. And he specifically referred to the fellow that, came last week and had his hands up and whatever. I don't remember the word, but I just, I remember thinking like, good for him. He's just doing his own thing, whatever. Why? But I
Right.
can look back and I always remember that. And I think that's so limiting and so not friendly. And how can we, as, how can, not me, how can my pastor or people that believe that feel so strongly that you can't raise your hands to, hello, pray or sing to God?
Right.
Like, which I think is the thing
Exactly.
they didn't people raise their hands like,
Yeah.
or
David
kind of,
danced. Okay,
yeah,
David danced, which is
hello.
funny. So Baptists try to explain it around like he just did this little happy dance. I'm like, no. David danced. They
Yeah,
had ritualistic dancing in the Old Testament because just like all the other tribes and people around them, they all had their own ritualistic things that they did.
yeah,
He danced, like legitimately danced. And so it's okay if we stomp
yeah,
our foot or if we
right.
like clap a hand.
But if you
I
think about
mean,
those old hymns of the faith, it is kind of hard to dance to them. You got to give give it to
yes.
that book.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah,
We
it's
did
kind of
have
hard to
I
like I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say when we were at camp, I do remember an activity, and I'm sure every other 15-year-old did this, but we would add a phrase. We just like would make up a phrase, a random phrase, and then add it to the titles that we knew. And the one that kind
Mhm.
of stands out in my memory is the phrase "in the bathtub." So then think of any title, "All is well with my soul in the bathtub," or whatever, or
Victory in
like
Jesus in the
"Victory in
bathtub.
Jesus in the bathtub." Like it was just a funny thing for us to do. And then we would change the phrase to like, in the middle of the night or oh, I can't even think of them while shopping or something.
That is
But
so funny. I want to kind of do that now. I'm gonna do it with my kids. Let's do this.
yeah, but it had to be those old hymns of the faith
Yes.
titles because they were a little wonky.
See, the oddest, like of all the hymns, I think the one that was is like oddest to me is like the one that's Jesus, lover of my soul. I'm like,
Okay.
if you really think about that title, I'm like, that's kind of creepy. A
Yeah.
little bit on the creepy side. And I'm like, why would we sing that? And it's like so slow. And then you sing this song, but you avoid talking about the Song of Songs because it makes people uncomfortable. And it's like
Yeah.
a really graphic book. I don't know. It's just like there's so many things that are just contrasting and so many things that just don't make sense that it just kind of cracks me up.
Yeah.
I've been in churches where, because I grew up in a lot of churches because my dad moved us around a lot. And there was one church that if you were a member of the church, If you came in on a Wednesday night in your work clothes, you were asked to leave.
What?
You were ushered out.
Well, okay.
And
I remember at
so
least in our
you,
church, the Wednesday nights were a little bit more casual. You were allowed to kind of just, I think, come as you were.
yeah, no, like they would have a full expectation
Mhm.
that you would show up in a suit and tie
Yeah.
every single service. And if you didn't, like for the men anyway, you'd be asked to leave. And if women did not wear dresses or skirts at the proper length or the proper
Mhm.
whatever, you would be asked to leave and change. And I'm just like, what does it
That's
matter?
that's yeah.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother thing. Yeah. The dress code was bizarre, and I didn't
What kind of dress code
understand.
did you have?
Oh, is the um dresses and skirts for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, even for the kids, and of course all the women. And then we had the kneel test to see if your sh skirt was an inch above the floor or whatever. And
Yeah.
I I mean, I was a 90s child, and so like culottes were the thing, and I don't know what those were,
Oh my
but
gosh,
that was
culottes.
the
That's the
culottes, and
stuff
then
of
the
nightmares.
and the wraparound skirts that
Yes.
like kind of had a short underneath, but then wrapped around. I don't know. But I guess
Yes.
what I was just thinking is that dress code was so bizarre for me because I had to dress a certain way to go to church. But then, and my parents were maybe kind of strict about how my shorts were or whatever. But other than shorts, I was allowed to wear tank tops and whatever, like pants and shorts and whatever I wanted to school.
Hmm.
So I just didn't I remember not understanding like why do I have to do this certain thing at church, but like I can wear whatever I want to school. That was confusing
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. My parents were really strict, like especially with like we went in a time without any TV because TV was a sin.
Oh
And then
yeah,
once we
me too.
finally we were allowed to have TV. We couldn't watch things like Full House or Saved by the Bell because they were back talking their parents.
Of course.
But my dad had an affinity for 80s slasher films. So, as a young child, I was introduced to 80s slasher films, but I could
Oh,
not watch Family Matters.
wow.
So that
Yeah,
was like a really weird,
yeah,
really weird thing. I'm like, there's no reason. This is why I'm so messed up as an adult
yeah,
because I
yeah,
watched
yeah.
Chucky at like 5, but I
I don't
couldn't
know if
watch.
yeah, I don't know if the things that my parents limited me in watching, I don't know if it was because they were kind of bad people or if it was some of the Baptist faith, but like I wasn't allowed to watch shows with African Americans. I think because my father is of the like, white is right kind of mentality.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, oh, and it's hard to sort of tease those things out. But,
yeah. I understand. We've been in churches that it's come out that like the people in the church are very much white is right and white people, Caucasians are like elite and it's just
yeah.
like I don't understand. I don't understand that mindset either because God created us all equal. I mean, he loves us all the same. It shouldn't matter what color our skin is, but that's a whole other topic for a whole different day.
Hmm.
Yeah, because there's so many things that Christianity or and especially like for me personally, just growing up in the IFB, like there's so many people that we have lost, so many good people that we have lost because of being racist and homophobic and
Hmm.
transphobic and misogynistic. And it's so sad because we're not called to be hateful towards people. We're called to
Right,
love people and love our neighbor
right,
as we love ourselves. And here we are saying, well, because you don't look like me, you don't love like me, you don't act like me, you don't dress like me, you do not qualify to then be in my box and get into my heaven.
right.
And that's just sad for me. That actually really breaks my heart because I had a really good friend in Bible college. And he is African American. And in the Bible college I was at, we girls and boys were not allowed to be alone together at
Yeah,
all,
yeah,
like
mine too.
zero.
Yeah,
That was really
yep,
bad because you make babies when you're alone. It doesn't matter what your
yeah,
orientation is, it's gonna happen.
yep.
And he was a music major and I'm a musician. So we would go into the conservatory and we'd play music all the time by ourselves. and we would get in so much trouble. And the primary concern was not the fact that we were male and female, it was because I was white and he
Wow.
was African American.
Yep.
And that just it just made me so angry and so mad that that
Absolutely.
is like one of those topics that makes my blood boil
Mm.
underneath.
Yeah, I can understand.
Yeah, and it's just like and I try to keep my composure, but like it's a soapbox I can jump on and just like this is why I
Hmm.
have a YouTube channel now. I can talk about stuff like this
Yeah, yeah, you
and
can pick the
make
topics.
people mad.
Yeah,
So, but so now like you still have your faith now and you your church is kind of like you're outside. Like that's like
yeah,
kind of like your church and that's just where your faith is. And um if you had an ideal church or my guinea pigs are going crazy. They're chasing each other around. I'm so sorry if you can hear that.
no, I can't.
They're like jumping over their houses and like they're
Oh, fun.
spazzing.
I'm gonna tell you one of my secrets, and I'm not gonna
Yes.
demonstrate for you, but I can do an excellent guinea pig impersonation, and that's one of my little like party tricks
Can
or
you show
whatever.
me off camera? I promise I will.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. But I don't my guinea pigs distracted me so much. Oh, so that's what I was going to ask. If you had like an ideal church, like what like if you could build your own church, like kind of like what would you like to see in a church if you could kind of build your own?
Yeah.
I know this
So
question was not one of the ones I was going to
no,
tell you.
no,
I
no,
didn't
it's
say it
okay.
just came
But
to my
it's
head.
I did have an experience one time. Once I went to it was held in a place we called Battelle Chapel. I don't honestly know what place is, but it's somewhere downtown New Haven, Connecticut. But it was a worship service, and it was just advertised worship service, silent worship service. Didn't have any particular faith attached to it or whatever. But you just came in. I think it was going to be like a 24 hours service, maybe from like I don't even remember specifically. It was in December, so maybe it was either Christmas or it was like into New Year's or something. But you could just go for
Mhm.
any amount of time. It's just bring a cushion, sit on the floor, and we just sat. And like that was so amazing to me. Just the feeling of like everybody's having their own like private world happening inside them. And people are praying and people are humming or singing to themselves. You were allowed to make a little noise, but it was community and it was worship and it was together and it was to whoever you believe in. So you could I don't know. So that is my ideal, where it's like we're together and we know it and we love each other and we're all good people and we have our God and we don't judge each other if it's different than yours or whatever. And I
Mhm.
would probably do it out in like one of those buildings called like a yurt of some sort in the middle of a
Yeah.
forest with
Yes.
like, the owls hooting in the background or whatever.
That's like the best. My favorite is whenever the wind rustles in the leaves, like the leaves rustle like in the wind. That's like my favorite. That is like the most calming,
Hmm.
like zen sound. Like I could just like
Sure.
I just that is like my favorite. Is like I will that would be what I want to hear in your yurt. I would
Yeah.
if I would
Yeah.
come and I would enjoy myself on my cushion and listening to the wind, just kind of going through and
Hmm.
just commune with, God and, and enjoy the community around me. That would just be very beautiful. If you
Hmm.
ever decide to do that, let me
Let's
know.
know.
I might show
Yeah.
up at your yurt.
Yeah. I have a real thing for the moon too, and I don't know if it's God related or not, but I feel like the moon is something that I can actually look at that's up in the outer space world. And like
Hmm.
I always thought, God is up, God's up there or whatever. And so
Yes.
I feel like I could connect to the moon as like something like a tangible like touch point of where
Yes.
my prayers were going or where my thoughts were going or something because it was too hard to imagine them just floating around in space. And I
Hmm.
didn't have a personal relationship with God until middle mid 20s. So I guess my point is I had attributed the moon as the place where my prayers were going. So I think
Yeah.
now I I can really connect with just the presence of the moon, or just I always check on it to see like how big or small it is or whatever, and not scientifically, but kind of like as if it has a personality of like it's coming, it's
Yeah,
going. How much
it's
is it
coming.
holding? Are people connecting to it? Are others looking at it across the world at the same time? Are they
Hmm.
praying to it? Like I'm often asking questions about the moon.
Yeah, yeah. The moon has always fascinated me. I like because I actually have friends all over the world too, and I'm like, I love the idea that we're all on the same ball looking
Hmm.
at this object that is we all can see it, doesn't matter where we are, and
Right.
we are just connected because of that. That it's like I don't know if you ever watched American Tail, Fievel Goes West, whenever he sings like somewhere out there and they're talking about
Yeah.
the moon.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, that song like gets me the feels every time because I'm like,
That's
I
cute.
get that. That's how I
Hmm.
feel.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's really nice. As we have a few minutes left, and as we're wrapping up, is there anything else that you would like to share, or anything that you would like? What here's how I'll word it. Is there something that you would like to tell yourself, like your younger self, going through this kind of like the beginning of this journey? Is there something that would have helped you along the way?
I probably wouldn't have listened to myself because, I was like stuck in that narrow-minded,
Yes.
you have to be this certain way. So I probably wouldn't even have heard me. But I guess I would wish to be another voice or something, like to just give some other knowledge so that I could have at least made a choice of what I believed in.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, I did have a person or two in my life, not until I was a teenager, I guess, but who did sort of show me love and compassion and Christ-like ways, and it wasn't you have to do this certain thing to get to heaven, or else the world is gonna burn in flames and well, whatever.
Right.
So I wish I had that earlier. Yeah,
Yeah. To kind of get a different perspective that it's not all hellfire and brimstone. That
yeah,
God really is love
yeah,
and
and
he
I
really
wish
does
that there
love
was
us.
yeah other people that showed me a Christ-like way without being the like hitting me in the face with the Bible.
Yes. Yeah, our world would be a much better place if we could all have that experience, like more people showing that Christ-like love. And I think, us getting out and changing our worldview and kind of getting out of that box and even, being brave enough to share our stories is going to be our way of showing that Christ-like love to people who may not necessarily get to hear it from anybody else.
Right.
And I think that's a really important thing. And I really appreciate you coming on and talking. And I hope to have you on
Mhm.
again and maybe we can like hit like a particular topic and
Sure.
like talk about that and kind of because there's a lot on my list I want to cover. I have like so many topics
Hmm.
and a lot of hot button topics and I think it's because it's important to be discussed. There's so many things that are hush hush in the Christian
Hmm.
community that
Hmm.
we need to talk about. And I'd love to have you on again to maybe have like a more of a topic directed discussion about things too, because
Sure.
and we could even talk about going out and living in the woods for a little bit and just enjoying church out in the woods too. That makes me want to go hike out tomorrow, and I can't. That makes
Yeah.
me sad.
Oh, sorry.
So I'm gonna wrap up
Mhm.
the episode today, and I thank you everyone for tuning in, and I appreciate Sarah for coming on and sharing her story and talking about her experience with us. And until next time, I hope you guys have a great week, and don't forget to like and subscribe and share the channel. And remember, everyone has a story. What's yours? Contact me if you want to share it. Have a great night.